Alright, so we're back with another One Punch Man chapter just a week after we got the last one. Yes, we definitely got some pretty surprising news that we are getting yet another revised version of the Ninja Village arc, this being the third version of this specific arc, starting with last week's chapter. Honestly, I was initially pretty bummed because that meant we'd probably spend like another year like spent last year covering this arc that we had already covered, but then taking a step back and reading the chapter, really analyzing the panels and the change in art and detail that we got with this version. This might not be something that people want to hear, but it was definitely necessary, especially comparing the very first version of the first chapter of this arc to this updated third version. It's night and day, completely different. The quality in the art this time is what we usually come to expect from Murata. And sure, you can make the argument that you could have just spent all that time focusing on one version to begin with, like coming out with monthly chapters or something. And honestly, that's a pretty valid point, but you know what? We're at this point already. We can't really go back. So in this latest chapter of the third and hopefully final version of the Ninja Village arc, we get yet another revised and improved chapter with some pretty interesting and also funny moments added in that we didn't get before. One thing I do want to cover at the beginning here, because I didn't make a chapter review for the previous chapter, seeing as how I saw that there was going to be a new one this week, I figured I would just couple them both into one. This version has definitely been following the source material, that being the webcomic, a lot more closely. Like sometimes it's like panel for panel the same. And I, being a big fan of the webcomic, will definitely welcome that every single time. In the previous chapter, we had Flashy Flash, Saitama, and Minako visiting the Hero Association headquarters, and this is where they technically reunite with Blast after seeing him in the Monster Association arc, of course. I mean, if you want to find out what happens in that chapter, you can honestly just watch my chapter review of the original version of this, because it's pretty much covering the same stuff, and we also get an updated and glowed up version of the Teninto clan, or whatever they're called, the Heavenly Ninja Party or something. And again, we get various instances of much improved art compared to the previous versions, and that continues in this next chapter. Because in the first chapter of this third version of this arc, we get this cover art of Fubuki, because of course she's not involved in the chapter whatsoever, so, makes perfect sense, she has to be on the chapter cover, right? That's just the Murata strat. Well, the same logic is apparently going into play with this chapter cover for this one, because it's one of Tatsumaki. And you guessed it, she is not in this chapter, but moving on. The beginning of this chapter is much like its previous version as well, with Flashy Flash kind of going into his backstory and his life at the Ninja Village, explaining how they would take people, or people that have been sold off by their parents at a very young age, and put them through these grueling exercises and grueling routines in order to shape them into assassins. They would pretty much only get like one night's rest every 72 hours. They would go through grueling physical and mental training in order to wipe any bit of humanity from their consciousness. And they would pretty much be forced to cull each other so that only the strongest would survive. Here he also goes over his relationship with Sonic and how he's pretty much the only friend he had at the Ninja Village while he was there, and how they slowly started to grow a bond with one another. This is probably one of the best examples, I think, of the much improved art in this arc, because in the scene where Sonic is going over his dreams and the flames along with some moths seem to be like reaching into the night sky infinitely, it's just a very beautiful setting. Like, it had a lot more thought going into it, I think. It honestly made the moment more meaningful because it really shows that Sonic's intentions really are pure, and he really does want to create a world where ninjas don't have to be assassins and they can freely follow their own dreams. I think the selective scenery with that just made it a lot more impactful, at least in my opinion. Then Flashy Flash goes on to explain how he pretty much poisoned Sonic so that he wouldn't show up for the graduation once they were officially supposed to become assassins. And this is where we get some minor tweaks and some changes that I think are pretty interesting. Because from my recollection of the previous versions, I don't really know them off the top of my head if you guys want to correct me in the comments, but I don't remember there ever being a scene where the God Cube was introduced as part of the graduation ceremony. I thought that was very interesting because we also learned in this arc that they pretty much used the Ninja Village to find suitable avatars for God. And it would make sense that come graduation time, only the cream of the crop would be left, meaning only the best potential avatars would be left for God. And in this version, we actually get a look at that graduation ceremony because they put on these like hooded, kind of suspect looking like garbs, I'm not gonna lie. If you guys can kind of tell who they resembled, think it to yourself. You don't have to type it in the comments. But if you know, you know. But anyway, they unveil the God Cube, presumably to start the, monstrification process. But then surprisingly, Flashy Flash takes out the people conducting the ceremony along with his graduating class, other than of course Sonic, who is still at home sick. And again, this is a very good example of just how like true to the webcomic this version seems to be. Like there's this panel of Flashy Flash with his back facing the dead bodies of the ceremony people and shirtless and all cut up from the back, holding these two knives. And this is like the exact shot that we get in the webcomic when he's explaining this part. So I personally thought that was a pretty cool detail. And what I think is probably the funniest and probably the most enjoyable change to this chapter compared to previous versions is that after Flashy Flash tells this story, we come to find out that he's been telling this story to everybody while they were in Saitama's apartment. So we see like Stitches and Blast's boots at the door along with everyone else's shoes. And then we just kind of them all sitting around at the table listening to this story. I thought it was pretty adorable, honestly. And of course we got to remember that going to Saitama's house and sitting at his table with him is pretty much like the official introduction or initiation into the Saitama group. So not only does Saitama have Fubuki, King, Genos, and kind of Sonic, also along with Bomb and Bang, but now he has Blast and Sitch joining his team. Like this is probably the most powerful team in One Punch Man, no questions asked, like even without Saitama, right? I don't know, I thought that was pretty funny and cool. There is some dialogue in response to this story, and I don't have the exact phrasing right now because the translations haven't come out just yet at the time of this recording, but it seems like in this moment Blast is kind of sitting back and thinking to himself about something related to the Ninja Village, and to my understanding of what I got from like rough translations is that he might be thinking about like a specific thing that he did or a specific event that took place in the webcomic that was kind of omitted from the manga in previous versions. Something that might paint Blast in a more, not so heroic light. Those of you that have read the webcomic, you know what I mean. So we're just going to have to wait and see what comes out of that, because I do think Blast needs some more tweaking in terms of like his role and his personality in this arc. Also, at some point, Flashy Flash says to Saitama that it's pretty rude to not offer tea to his master or something to that effect, which leads Genos to barge through this like hole that he made in Saitama's wall to access his room whenever he wants to, and like slams a cup of tea on Flashy Flash's head, which I thought was pretty funny. And also the chapter ends with Saitama, like it seems like he's about to say something pretty profound, like something that's super serious, that's kind of getting everyone in the room's attention, only for him to talk about like stew ingredients or something stupid like that, like some Saitama stuff, you know what I mean? Something that's like completely unrelated to what we're supposed to be talking about right now. And that's where this much improved chapter ends. Now, I don't know personally if we're going to be getting another chapter next week, if we're going to be getting like weekly chapters from now on or something. If you guys find out some news or something comes out, after this video comes out, let me know in the comments below. I would definitely like to know. But in the meantime, let me know what you guys think about these revised chapters. Like, are you just waiting for the next arc to come? Are you sick of this Ninja Village arc and you don't care about the improvements? Or do you think these improvements were, much more detail involved in these chapters? Let me know your thoughts, and also let me know in the comments below if you've read the latest webcomic chapter that just came out. Full disclosure here, I've honestly been so freaking busy lately that I have not gotten a chance to read the translated version. I looked at the raw scans when the chapter first came out, but I still have to read the translated version and make a video about that, so let me know if you guys want to see that video. But that being said, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next video.